And clouds are actually seen so many times in this film, from where the ships are landing, the title sequence on clouds, the landscapes of different parts of the world. We see these heavily clouded atmospheric landscapes. The actual area of the ship where Abbott and Costello stay, they're surrounded by this cloudy atmosphere. It also connects to the idea of this dispersed kind of environment where America is in the other nations are dispersed and they're not connected and they're spread apart, and in a way they're spread thin, like the atmosphere of the clouds.
Denis Villeneuve is a god on earth. When it comes to filmmaking, he's at the peak of anyone's career right now, at the top of his game, one of the most exciting filmmakers. And in 2016, he gave us Arrival.
It was his first foray into science fiction, Arrival, and it was really fantastic. I was expecting something along the lines of Close Encounters, very similar construct of an idea for a story, communication with aliens, but it became much more of its own thing, and I was really pleasantly surprised, shocked, and absolutely blown away. I had been a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve for a long time, like you, with Prisoners, with Enemy, in his earlier films. Polytechnique was one of the first ones I saw. He's just a really incredible filmmaker, and to see him in the world of science fiction, it's just a match made in heaven in a lot of ways. Some directors are really suited to the genre.
What's interesting is he's only done science fiction ever since he did this, because immediately once he finished Arrival, went right into Blade Runner 2049 in 2017.
Blade Runner 2012.
Then obviously we know he's made Dune, and he's working on Dune Part 2, and then hopefully Dune Part 3
Dune
eventually. I mean, it's Denis Villeneuve episode. It is what it is, Anthony. You got to accept the fact that I'm going to bring up Dune every time we do an episode.
Science fiction's in great hands this past decade. And no, I mean, I think
horror too, yeah.
In 2010s and 2020s, science fiction's been doing very well. And I love the superhero genre. If you think about superhero movies, are basically science fiction movies. It's pretty much science fiction.
I mean, if you look at the broadness of the term science fiction, of course, super beings are part of that.
So I actually do put superheroes into the category of science fiction.
I don't do that.
But then this is like, without the superhero comic book background, it's a different kind of science fiction, and I really enjoy it. And science fiction is one of my favorite genres: horror, science fiction, and then indie drama. Those are my top tier favorites to watch. Because we love science. I love the idea of exploring things that we don't even grasp yet. And this movie explores the idea of time in a really incredibly unique way. I mean, it's shocking that Christopher Nolan didn't make this movie, but, it seems like right up his alley. It's bread and butter.
Just the way that time's presented in terms of the structure of the film, the storytelling, the nonlinear structure, cross-cutting. We don't want to spoil things immediately, because if you've never seen Arrival, we can't recommend watching it enough. And this is a movie that demands second, third, fourth viewings, because I think I've seen it now 4 times. And
once you watch a lot of movies, man.
Once you understand the film and all the themes that are presented to you, and obviously the ending, the second, third watches, I start crying within 10 minutes of the movie, because I understand what I'm seeing, versus a first-time watch. You don't really understand the time and locations and places of events that are happening in the first act of the film.
That's why that's why I threw out Christopher Nolan, because his movies, when they do discuss time, they are rewarding on rewatches, and they get better on rewatches. They become a different thing in rewatches. Arrival, it's a different movie the second time you watch it. When you understand what you were seeing in the first act of the film with Louise and her character, when you understand the actual context of it after the first viewing, when you watch it again, it is very much like a different movie, and it actually adds so much more to it. It's a rare movie where, in a lot of ways, maybe the second watch is better than the first watch.
Absolutely, I agree.
Because the first watch is so much of a mystery, and for the most of the time, it's not so much you're being misled, but you're being shown things, then it presented things in terms of the memories and the sequences within Louise's mind and her life, where you think it's something that seems obvious, but then, I don't know. It's hard to do without spoiling.
Relax.
I'm just saying, but I'm saying it without spoiling. I'm trying here.
He's trying. Well,
it's like
talk about
it's like open heart surgery. It's like operation.
There are other things you can.
Let me finish. Let me finish my operation. I almost got the wrench, man.
Well, let's not get into.
But then when you watch this second time, it's like you understand it fully, and it's like, wow, this movie is so much more than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's basically said the exact thing that I just said.
Now, before we get more into James's nonsense, I have some great Letterboxd reviews I found on Letterboxd of Arrival that I think would be a lot of fun to read.
I hope so.
First up, we actually have one from George Carmi, our friend.
George, this is one of his favorite movies.
All right. And George wrote on Letterboxd, 5 stars. Might be the greatest movie of all time. I don't know. I'm high. Arrival is greater than everything, including mini M&Ms. I'm watching The Batman now, and this motherfucker really dresses up like a giant bat. Ain't no way he gets away with this in real life. Like, bro, you're a grown-ass man in a bat suit. Anyways, I'm Batman. That was his Letterboxd.
That's his review for Arrival?
Yeah.
He also said Almost Famous is the best movie ever made, so...
Almost Famous is great.
It's a terrific movie. It really is. What else you got for Letterboxd reviews? And these are just other fun ones, not 1 stars.
These are all 5 stars.
Okay, cool.
And 4.5 stars. Liam wrote, I go for entertainment value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liam wrote, still waiting for a Heptapod Duolingo update.
If I hear, like, I can imagine, like, the ink blots and then just, like, the ding, ding, and all the sound effects from Duolingo, which drive me nuts. Like, when you're, like, the DMV and you hear someone on Duolingo, like, 20 feet away.
Need that little green owl to teach me their language. I want to be besties with those intellectual space octopuses.
I wonder if it teaches terrible phrases like it does. Duolingo just teaches you
Yeah, you don't want to learn
stuff.
Heptapod on Duolingo.
Here, we're going to learn how to say ant and elephant.
There's
Ready?
a horse at the gate in Heptapod. You can't use it in real life. Next up, Lucy wrote, as Owen Wilson would say, wow.
I mean, first time I saw this movie, that's what I thought.
And then our last Letterboxd review, Alan wrote, in 2017, Amy Adams says, hi, the Academy, I'm calling the police.
She didn't get a nomination.
Nothing. Ironically,
She got a nomination for everything but the Academy.
Yeah, I think she's the only actor to get nominated for every major award institution except for the Academy Awards, is what I read.
And the Arrival is the first Best Picture nominee to not get a single, one of the first of the year, the only Best Picture nominee of the year to not get an actor nomination as well. It got 8 nominations and 1 win and 1 Best Sound Design, but it didn't get a nomination for acting at all.
Wow, that's shocking because Denis Villeneuve obviously is brilliant and he made the film what it is because this is based on a short novella. And it's actually
You don't have to say short novella. A novella is already short, Anthony.
It's based on a little novella.
It's like you wouldn't say no, not.
It's based on a little novella. It's a little. I mean, for the most part, it's about the same, but it has a lot of big differences from the actual short story that it's based on. And so it's not exactly a straight up perfect adaptation, but Denis brought this really unique story to the screen in a way, the only way it could have worked. A couple of things he changed was in the short story there were 112 ships that landed. There were actually 9 ships that landed in America instead of 1.
But they weren't exactly ships. They were sort of mirrors.
So they were ships, and inside of the ships was this mirror. And in this mirror window is where Louise and the other scientists from around the world communicated with the aliens. However, the aliens were actually hovering in the atmosphere of Earth on their main ship and communicating through the mirror. So the Heptapods were never actually inside of the ships that arrived. And so Denis Villeneuve wisely was like, let's make it smaller in scale, so it's 12, and let's make it so that the aliens are actually physically inside of the ships. That works better. It just cinematically, it suits that for the story.
Absolutely.
It just absolutely works better. But the thing is, this movie, Denis Villeneuve, he understands that, like, Amy Adams is one of the best actors alive. Let me just put the camera right up on her face, and she's going to be able to carry every scene.
And let's set the movie up as well. 2016, Arrival came out. When mysterious spacecraft touch down across the globe, an elite team, led by expert linguist Louise Banks
And Hawkeye.
are brought together to investigate. As mankind teeters on the verge of global war, Banks and the team race against time for answers. And to find them, she will take a chance that could threaten her life and quite possibly humanity. Denis Villeneuve adapted the screenplay with Eric Heiserer from the novella by Ted Chiang called Story of Your Life, which was published in 1998. That was the original working title of the film as well. However, test audiences did not enjoy it very much. Again, 8 Academy Award nominations with 1 win. No acting nominations at all. I'm surprised it didn't win visual effects either. And Johan Johansson could not get nominated because too much of Max Richter's song of the Nature of Daylight is in the film, so it disqualified him from a nomination. On a budget of $47 million, this film grossed $203 million worldwide. Very successful.
What was the budget? I'm sorry.
$47 million.
Wow.
$200 million globally, insanely successful. Not to mention, this is a really, I'm sure, highly rented movie. People talk about this a lot in the film community, film Twitter, film talk, film tube, film YouTube. Everyone loves Arrival. It's discussed often. I see cinematography clips and images all over the place. So I'm sure it's an adored movie around the world.
And the thing with Johan Johansson's score is this actually happened with Johnny Greenwood for There Will Be Blood. And there's a couple of Penderecki tracks used in that film, like Richter's song, The Nature of Daylight in this film. And what happens is it's not so much about how many it's really more is the theme of this movie it felt too much like it was the song for Richter's song felt like the theme of the movies. And that's what happened with There Will Be Blood, where even though Johan Johansson made over an hour's worth of music, the Richter song was like the movie. You know what I mean? And they used it twice in the first act and then in the finale. So So when a song that isn't made for the movie is used that prevalently, it's not really so much how many minutes it's used, but it's more of like, does it feel like this is the theme of the film? And if that's the case, they disqualify the score.
It really is. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. It's obviously used multiple times in film. I think there's like 5 other really good examples of On the Nature of Daylight in cinema, but I think it's used most profoundly in Arrival. Yeah. And it bookends the film in addition to the way they edit the film. But also there are bits of it sprinkled throughout depending on what Louise is seeing, whether she's having quote-unquote flashbacks of her daughter who's sick. We hear often tones from On the Nature of Daylight. But the score that Johan created in general was just really terrific and mostly analog-based. All the sounds that they created using sequencers, synthesizers, samplers, just like he did for Sicario and Prisoners, all almost done analog. And he created really more than just a score for Arrival. It's more of a soundscape. It's really this ambient world. Obviously, the sound design in this movie is terrific, and the sound of the Heptapods, the sound of their ships, really great stuff. But in addition to that, what Johan brought to the sound design with the music he created, whether you're hearing vocals of singing, of choir, of beautiful voices, you're hearing animal sounds in his score, you're hearing so many different awe-inspiring, ethereal, and even alien sounds from just the music to create an incredible atmosphere that this film does really effectively in terms of feeling very alien. You know, the ships are unlike anything you've ever imagined. That the alien description, the alien size, the alien details, their design is unlike anything you could ever fathom yourselves, not to mention the reveal eventually. I guess we can start getting into a little bit spoilery stuff now. We think we're seeing the full size of the aliens for the majority of the film, but then we realize it's just basically like their feet or their hands to an extent, and they're massive 4 or 5 story beings with these huge bodies, and we were just really communicating with their hands to an extent. So the design is wholly unique in every aspect, which makes this film feel very alien.
And what makes Johan an impressive composer is just 2 years before this, he composed the Theory of Everything score, which is really just like heavy piano and orchestra and very traditional and very light and breezy. And then he does this, and it's like what range of an artist he was. Like really impressive stuff to be able to go from that to this film. And I love the design of the film, and you get a lot of it does feel like Prisoners in terms of its aesthetic and in terms of its coloring. Denis in this time DP Bradford Young. Very desaturated, very cool tones throughout the entire course of the film. And it just is very reminiscent of Prisoners as well as the cloudy weather. And clouds are actually seen so many times in this film. We see clouds all over the place from where the ships are landing. The title sequence is the title comes up on clouds. The landscapes of different parts of the world, we see these heavily clouded atmospheric landscapes. The alien environment, the actual area of the ship where Abbott and Costello stay, they're surrounded by this cloudy atmosphere. And then the language that we speak is kind of just representative of that with the clouds. And it also connects to the idea of this dispersed kind of environment where America is in the other nations are dispersed and they're not connected and they're spread apart. And in a way, they're spread thin like the atmosphere of the clouds. And it really takes us coming together, becoming one whole to solve the entire problem, and also becoming whole as a race, but also becoming a whole as in terms of the language, in terms of the circular language that Louise ends up becoming fluent in and envelops her entire being, basically. So the clouds are seen throughout this entire film from start to beginning in so many different ways, and they're very relative to the themes of the film.
Aesthetically, it's a very impressive film, and Bradford Young is a terrific cinematographer. And dirty sci-fi is what he and Denis Villeneuve were going for. That's the look that they created for Arrival. Denis Villeneuve wanted to feel like this was happening on a bad Tuesday morning, like when you were a kid on the bus on a rainy day and you dream while looking out the window at the clouds. Scandinavian photographer Martina Höglund, even now, was a major influence on Bradford Young for the cinematography and look of this film, especially with her exhibition in the book Speedway. To quote Bradford, there's a book called Speedway by a photographer named Martina Höglund. Even now, it's just motocross bike racers in these races at night in the snow. She did a set of portraits of the actual riders. She shot them taking epic falls and watching them get out in the snow. It seems so worldly, but otherworldly at the same time. I looked at the photographs early, like this is the kind of film you want to make, this dirty science fiction. And I recommend checking it out. We'll put photos of this photography book from Martina on the video version of the podcast, but it really feels like what Bradford was able to capture cinematically, these incredible portraits, plus Patrice Vermette, who's an often collaborator for Denis Villeneuve. He is a terrific production designer, got an Oscar nomination for this film. He did not do Blade Runner 2049, but he did do Dune and Dune Part 2, working with Greg Fraser and Denis on the visuals of those films. But I think he's a really special production designer and brings a lot to this film because the scope of this film is massive in terms of the global scale and obviously intergalactic scale, but at the same time, it's very grounded. We're in very small locations, very tight quarters for the majority of the film. And the visual effects, you'd be surprised how much CGI is actually in this movie, because even though it looks so organically filmed, which a lot of it is, they do a great job blending their CGI in, because they're not world building so much with CGI. They're still filming locations, vast wide shots of farmland, grassland, wooded areas. But what they're doing with CGI is they're obviously creating the aliens, creating the alien ships and the heptapod ships. But every time you see helicopters, tanks, oftentimes wide shots of soldiers, even dirt roads, adding trees, vessels in the water, ships, anything like that, helicopters flying through the air, CGI, and it's really impressive. And even the sequence where Louise is inside of the massive ship at the end of the film, that really white atmosphere you're talking about, the clouds, her hair was done with CGI. She was wearing like a mocap dotted suit in that sequence, but the CGI is done really well where it's just seamless and disappears into what they actually film. So they actually film locations. And like, for example, one of my favorite shots of the movie is when we're getting to the Big Bean, the big heptapod ship. And we get that incredible 360 helicopter shot of this army base that has just been erected around where that ship has landed from a distance. We have a campsite, basically. We have trucks. We have buildings, structures. Now, the structures, and they actually built that army base for real. Obviously, there's a lot of great shots on the ground there, a lot of handheld, great cinematography, so great practical set building. But that 360 shot, there's 5 helicopters on the ground. There's maybe 100 soldiers walking all over the place, trucks moving around. All of that is CGI added in post-production. So they filmed the base from the air, added helicopters, added trucks, added people. So just they added detail to cinematography to create beautiful CGI shots.
And what makes Bradford Young different from most other DPs is his style of cinematography. And in a way, he heavily influenced the new look of Star Wars, shooting Solo, a Star Wars story, which is a really great-looking film.
That's all you'll say about it. It's the only nice thing you'll say about Solo.
No, Alden Ehrenreich did a great job. I like
Solo.
I think he
I
did
don't
a
like
very
the
good
third
job.
act, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I don't like the Kessel Run too. I don't like the origins of that.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah,
but
it looks really good.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
So Bradford Young, his style of cinematography influenced the new look for Star Wars, especially the TV shows, especially The Mandalorian.
And then Greg Fraser with Rogue One, obviously.
Exactly. So, but what Bradford likes to do is he likes to shoot in the toe. Now, shooting in the toe, just like the toe. It's a lighting term. So I'll point it out, and you'll be able to see it from now on when you watch Arrival, as well as The Most Violent Year, and Solo. So shooting in the toe is Bradford likes to shoot with very low light and very low contrast. And so the toe basically refers to creating a curve with the light, from shadows to midtones to highlights. And it's not a balanced curve, so there's no really true blacks in the imagery. And even the shadows are really kind of light. So he crushes all the dark shadows. So there's really no contrast. And there's really no piercing highlights except for obviously where Abbott and Costello are. And it's really interesting photography because we're so used to, with film, heavy contrast and extremely saturated colors. That's another aspect to his cinematography. Very muted color tones. And you see that in Solo. In Solo, there's a lot of sequences that are extremely dim lighting. But you can still see everything that's going on, even in a very low light situation, because he takes away the contrast. So he crushes the contrast. So shooting in the toe is something that a couple other DPs do, but he really became a heavy user of it in these large scale films. And it really suited this film, again, with the idea of the clouds that we see as a main motif of the film. So I think it looks beautiful, excellent cinematography, and beautiful color correcting. However, I do like Roger Deakins. He added a lot of color and contrast to Blade Runner 2049. I'm not sure Bradford's cinematography would have quite felt the same if Denis hired him for Blade Runner.
I think he was doing Selma anyways.
Selma was 2014.
Okay, so he did Selma first, then this.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he did afterwards, or he did Solo after.
Yeah, Solo 2018.
Yeah, okay, so he's busy doing Solo, so he couldn't have done 2017 anyways. I mean, Blade Runner 2049 anyways. And speaking of the interior with the very bright sequence of that massive window, you could say, they actually built the interior of the ship and that large tunnel. So obviously the exteriors of the wides of the ships are all CGI, except for, when your Renner's character is brushing his hand against the surface of the ship.
Sure.
You're only using actual surfaces when you're using close-ups or mediums, so you're not getting wide shots of a ship. But the interior sequence, that massive chamber, they built that. It's huge. There's great behind-the-scenes videos, behind-the-scene photos of this massive chamber that tunnel runs maybe 100 feet, maybe more. And then that inner chamber where the large window is, they built that entire area, that entire set. It looks really terrific, but that's just great practical filmmaking. And I love Denis because he doesn't rely so much on CGI. He needs it to make this movie, but he's not going to overdo it. He's not going to do the entire movie on green screens and blue screens. But let's build this massive interior of this massive CGI ship to make it feel even more real. And it just looks really incredible, and it looks organic and alien at the same. It looks organic to Earth at the same time as being alien, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really love the interior of the ship. And so first of all, it's really fascinating because they were actually they were struggling to figure out how the scientists and soldiers were supposed to traverse this vertical tunnel.
Yeah.
Because the way it's arranged is they're actually going up into the ship vertically. And they were trying to figure out for a while, how do we make this logistically possible? And then they came up with the idea that seems pretty obvious after the fact, but obviously it took a while to come to the conclusion, to affect gravity in a horizontal fashion so that when they went up into the tunnel, they fell on top of the wall, which was a wall, but now it's the floor. That way they're able to actually traverse and walk vertically up because of the gravity shift. And so that's just ended up being a really beautiful shot and really fantastic moment for the film to also be like, yeah, we're on Earth, but still things are different in the ship. And that added to like the alien nature of it, where even though we're still on the Earth and in our atmosphere, they step into the ship and it's like they're on an alien planet already in a way.
Yeah, in a way.
It feels like they're stepping on alien turf.
Yeah, in the spacecraft itself, so it owes its design to an asteroid actually called 15 Eunomia. During research, director Denis Villeneuve became attracted to Eunomia's insane shape like a strange egg and thought that kind of a pebble or oval shape would bring a perfect sense of menace and mystery to the spacecraft. While the shape of the ship was decided early on, Denis Villeneuve had great difficulty, like Anthony said, imagining that interior. And the aliens themselves, I really adored the design of these because I've never seen one quite like this, where they're massive, enormous beings. Usually, aliens in film can be humanoid, can be odd looking, but size-wise, usually around our size. If you like aliens, sort of like in War of the Worlds, Spielberg's movie, they're human size to an extent, but they're very creature-like.
They're little, yeah, they're little guys.
Yeah, but they would still mess one of us up. Probably they got weird arms and limbs and faces, but usually they're the size of humans or a little bit smaller. But I love the concept of this massive round ship. Then inside, these beings could be as tall as this ship almost, or if not, pretty close to the size of the entire ship. Now, to quote IndieWire, I got some great details here. The 7-limbed heptapods, a cross between a spider and octopus, are charcoal gray and oval like their shell-like spacecraft. And their circular logograms spew forth like florid ink blots. That's how they communicate, with those logograms, expressing the beginning and the end of thoughts all at once. That's what I found really fascinating about the way they talk and communicate, these circular ink blots. They're very complex phrases of not just what you would say in terms of dialogue or language, but also a feeling gets input in there as well at the same time. It's not just translation of words.
And they don't communicate with sound.
Yes.
So it's important.
That's a great question that this film presents. Like, everyone assumes when aliens come to Earth, which I love how they don't land. They just arrive. It's not an invasion. It's an arrival. What happens if aliens come to Earth, but they can't speak? When you have to try to figure out how to communicate with them. But these logograms, it's a weird word, logograms, were particularly challenging for production designer Patrice Vermette. To quote him, "We looked at hieroglyphics, but Denis didn't think they were alien enough. And my wife, Martine Bertrand, is a painter and asked if she could take a crack at it. The following morning, she presented a series of drawings, and one of them was this logogram that looked like an ink blot. It was perfect. We reverse engineered it into a series of over 100 symbols. And according to visual effects supervisor Louise Morin, the aliens have been traveling for thousands of years and are really, really old. And the reference for skin was whales and elephants. They don't walk like spiders, but move in an unusual way with slow hip movement because of the gravity and the mist. The alien language is an abstraction of time. Hybrid tested fluid simulation with ink and developed an organic look that flows out of the aliens in a zero-gravity way and generates the logogram. To make it less 2D looking, they added volume." Now, what's really also interesting about these heptapods, I said earlier how their ship looks almost organic to Earth and alien at the same time. And you could argue that the aliens themselves kind of follow that same pattern of looking like they could be a species similar to what we have on Earth, because what's most believable about them being alien to an extent of also maybe organic to Earth is their similarities to cephalopods, squids, and octopus. You know, from their body shape to their tentacles to their ability to squirt ink out. Now, in many ways, it makes sense to use the squid and octopus as models for alien life, according to Quartz.com. The oceans are like an alien world already, with an atmosphere we cannot breathe that gives birth to bizarre forms beyond our imaginations, and cephalopods are about as far from the classic mammalian arrangement as you get above the surface of Earth.
So they're like the most alien creatures to
you can
us.
think about it. Yeah, exactly. Yet they display surprising intelligence. Octopuses use tools. They play. They solve problems and puzzles. They may even engage in warfare with improvised weapons.
Whoa.
They're the only invertebrate that displays a level of thinking scientists ascribe to consciousness. Indeed, any aquarist who has attempted to keep such creatures in captivity learns quickly just how smart these animals are and just how much work is required to keep them happy and healthy. Individuals exhibit different personalities in this species, with some that are cooperative and friendly and some that are markedly not. Researchers have also found that without enough mental stimulation, captive octopuses quickly become distressed and even harm themselves, not entirely unlike the behavior that we humans exhibit in response to solitary confinement. And Juno felt the same thing because we were gone for 4 days, and I came home and he was like, "Where have you been?
Where were you?" He had a knife out.
Etching the days on the wall.
It was 3 days, Juno. Also, our roommate checked on you, so you're fine.
Drama queen.
Yeah, and Abbott and Costello, it's fascinating. And I actually, in other countries, and specifically Italy, they were actually called Tom and Jerry because they were that familiar with Abbott and Costello and that culture.
Someone should call them Ben and Jerry, like the ice cream.
So I mean, that's my biggest weakness is Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
What's your favorite one?
It's probably the Stephen Colbert one is really good.
It's
the Jimmy Fallon one.
Just got bits of Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah,
in it. So you know
real
it's good.
bits of Fallon.
It's
great.
It's got his fingernail clippings.
It's a little bloody, but make sure you eat it cold. But the language is really fascinating, and they actually did create a pretty big thing to work, a pretty big scale of language to work with. So Villeneuve and Eric Heiser, the screenwriter, created a fully functioning visual language. Their teams managed to create a Bible, basically, which included over 100 different completely operative logograms, those circles, 75 of which are actually featured in the film itself. And the actual language was created by Montreal artist Martine Bertrand, and her son actually drew all of the drawings of Hannah's drawings in the film, which is Louise's daughter. So her son actually made her drawings in the film, which is very cute.
That's very interesting.
But the language is everything. That's basically, obviously, one of the main themes of the film is language and memory and time, and how in this film everything's intertwined. I read that human beings' intelligence is metered by their language. It's basically like a test, an example of how intelligent they are
in terms of like how much they can communicate with.
Exactly. So how we can speak and how we can write is a meter for our intelligence. And in this regard, it's also translated to time in the film. And so humans interact in the world in the plane of an arrow of time. The arrow of time is linear time. How we speak, how we write, how we think, it's all in a line from beginning to end.
Past, present, future to us is
Exactly.
a line, yeah.
There's nothing, it doesn't go in any other direction except one direction. That's called the arrow of time. And that's explored in this film as well as the circle, which is the communications and basically the plane of existence of the heptapods, where they think in a circle. Time is not relative to them. They think they live everything at once. And
yeah, so it's interesting because that's the way they show it really well with Louise, where she can tap into memories in the future that she hasn't experienced yet, because like you said, it's all at once, even though it's a circle, but that means that it's really just you're the direct center point. You can access anything, really.
Exactly. And it's not so much that Louise, she's clearly not, and we're going to spoil it all right now.
It's coming out, man.
It's been a while. So
it's been a while.
It's been a while. Louise is not time traveling. She's experiencing memories. And human beings, we understand time through memory. That's how we understand the world, through our memories of the past and how we translate it and relate it to the present, and also how we think about the future. It's all in our head. And memory is important for us. And memory is what Louise is experiencing. Although at first watch, we think these are memories of the past. We think that we can assume, based upon what we're presented, is that she had a daughter named Hannah who passed away of an illness. And now she's dealing with the repercussions of that. She's dealing with the fallout of that trauma. And she's still going forward with her life. But she's is carrying this burden within her.
Well, just to pause for a second, what's really great about the filmmaking is it makes it seem like she's repressing these memories.
Yes.
It's really effective.
And it's great because the writing isn't giving anything away. And what's also interesting is she starts experiencing these memories once the ships arrive. It's all connected. It's the catalyst for this all beginning for her. And because human beings understand time through memory and understand life through memory, that's why as she's learning the language and becoming fluent in it, she's beginning to think in this circle. She's beginning to think in Heptapod. And that's why she's seeing these visions. And she's not traveling to the future. She's not like, it's not as though she's like inserting herself into like, this future date to see this memory. These are just memories. They're moments. And it's still the same way that we experience memories. Something will remind us of a moment, or we'll think of a memory, or a song will play and we'll think of something from our past. That's what's happening to Louise in this film. She just doesn't understand that they're memories from her future. And it's not that she's seeing the future. She's thinking of memories. Because her mind is becoming less linear, and she's breaking away from the arrow of time, which all humans live on, the plane that we all live on and experience time on. Since she's breaking away from the arrow and she's entering the circle of time, everything is all at once. And that's what the heptapods' minds are like. It's not like they're accessing, let me go back to this memory from 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years in the future. It's all with them at all times. And Louise is becoming that in her mind, everything all at once. And it's really just not so much time travel, but looking back on the memories that haven't happened yet. because she's still becoming, she's in the middle of transitioning into this new plane of existence within her time in mind.
What's fascinating about that, specifically with Louise, is they talk about that theory. Renner's character brings up the theory that if you learn another language, your brain starts to change. It starts to think differently because you begin to think in that language, which is the weapon. You know, we find out that the aliens are coming to Earth. They've come here to present us with a weapon, basically a tool, though, because they don't really understand the difference between weapon and tool, how we believe it. And this tool is their language so that we can experience time all at once to an extent for not everyone on the planet, but for very special people like Louise. And in 3,000 years' time, we find out they'll need our help. Our very advanced civilization, 3,000 years. Hopefully we get past the iPhone and we can help these aliens out. But what's interesting about it with Louise specifically is she's a linguistic expert. She is probably fluent in 5, 6, maybe 7 languages. So it's really
proficient at many others.
So so then you think, how does her mind work? Where if you learn a new language, your brain changes. So how many times has Louise's brain changed to think in a different language? And can she access those different ways of thinking? Her brain is like so malleable to this point because she's done so much language and communication research and learning that maybe only someone as intelligent as her, as educated as her, could possibly learn the language of the heptapods. Because sometimes when I watch this movie, I'm like, does everyone on Earth going to get this power? We're all going to learn how to speak the heptapod language. I think it's going to be reserved for very special, very intelligent people like Louise that have a deep, deep understanding of not just language, but communication, because there's a stark difference between language and communication in this film, which Louise points out to her superiors multiple times, and the importance of the nuances of language. Because one of my favorite shots of this movie, of the entire film, that looks so incredible, these grand shots, exteriors, spacecraft, everything. One of my favorite shots in the whole film is a whiteboard. So the colonel, played by Forrest Whitaker, is kind of grilling Louise about, we need to get to that question that I want. What is your purpose here? I need an answer to this ASAP. We need to get there. And this is after she's basically giving basic English lessons to the heptapods. And so on the whiteboard behind Louise is a very complex math equation, maybe multiple math equations all over the place, just complicated numbers. I could never understand a single 2 inches of this whiteboard, let alone a digit. And so what she does is she erases a large section from the middle, and Renner's character's like, no, don't erase that, because he's probably been working his butt off on these equations and these mathematics and these science experiments. And she writes that simple phrase of, what is your purpose here, right? That's the sentence. And then she breaks down just the complexity of just this simple sentence and how nuanced language is. And it's surrounded by the most complex math you can imagine. So I think it's just a great metaphor for how complex language is and communication is compared to math and science. It's just as complicated, if not more. And I think it's just a great shot to show the themes of language versus communication.
Yeah, the complexity of it. Because you're talking about, because she's describing, okay, how do you, this is a noun.
We need them to associate just this verb.
They need to know what a verb is.
They need to know you as a collective versus you as a singular. And in purpose, where we have to understand, they have to understand purpose.
That's a really important scene because Whitaker's character, I mean, he understands that this is a crazy situation, but also he's trying to rush things. He doesn't quite understand, even, I mean, obviously not as close to her, how important it is to make the heptapods understand their language just as much as we understand their language. It's a two-way street, she's basically trying to say. She's like, I can't teach them, we can't learn from them if they don't know how to speak our language either. So they both sides need to learn the other side's language for communication to really work and for there to be much lower chance of any misinterpretations, because misinterpretations in the situation could be life or death and have huge consequences. So she's trying to stress that. And I really like the relationship because the colonel, when he first comes to her office, he's like, I'm here because you're the best. And she remembers they worked together previously. She was a translator for a mission that they needed help with. And so they actually had worked together. However, he doesn't feel like he wants her on the team. And he, even though she does have the security clearance needed to be on that site, she kind of like tries to sway his opinion to let her in. And he basically rejects her. He's like, I'm going to go talk to a couple other people. And then she's like, I know you're going to talk to what's his name, whatever that bozo's name is, ask him what the Sanskrit word for war is, and as a test. Later on, a couple scenes later, the colonel comes back, clearly not happy with his interview with the other linguist expert, and she asks, "What did that guy give you for an answer?" And it wasn't the right answer. So he asks, "What is the Sanskrit word for war?" And she says, "We need more cows." And so she's trying to show that she is, even amongst linguistic experts, she is the most suited person for this job. And she's not just trying to get on, she's trying to help. And when he understands that, how important she is, he takes her right there.
A desire for more cows.
Desire for more cows.
Get in the helicopter. Get in the chopper.
Because she's showing that even amongst experts, there can be misinterpretations and mistranslations. And that could mean the consequences of that could be huge. So she's trying to show that I'm the right person for this gig.
Let's get into some superlatives, and then how about we head to our intermission, then we'll get back and break down Arrival even more, because there's so much juiciness to discuss with this film.
Let's do it.
So superlatives, Anthony, is the MVP of Arrival?
Gotta go with Denis Villeneuve, especially after reading basically the synopsis of the short story and seeing how he expanded on the story and how he basically evolved the story for the screen in amazing ways. His direction, his vision, directing the actors, everything about this film. It's a very complicated movie. He made it work, and he made it digestible for audiences, so he's going to be the MVP.
Yeah, he's the MVP. Just the storytelling alone of how do you translate this to cinema and changing it up with bold decisions and massive changes from the source material in very effective ways to tell the story in a movie. And I'm sure that the writer wasn't so, like, I'm sure he doesn't have too much control.
He said he was very happy with it.
Yeah, the end result. But I'm sure at first the major changes were like, oh, you're really going to just turn it into 9 ships instead of 112? All right, let's see how that works. But I think visually, it's just, he's so great at decision making. He knows what audiences demand from a viewing experience. He knows how to capture suspense. He builds it so well with this film. Plus the editing, the nonlinear storytelling, showing the future and the present at the same time throughout the entirety of the film, sets up a very emotional film and really kind of a family drama at the same time as kind of traveling through time to an extent, as well as this great original science fiction alien film. It operates on so many levels so well. Plus a couple really solid landing jokes.
Yeah, some good jokes.
All right, Anthony. Best scene from Arrival.
My favorite scene is when Louise actually writes with Abbott, and they write together.
Oh yeah, when the ink comes out of her, he gives her the ink.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, they do it together. Yeah,
he
on either side of the screen.
Yeah, he gives her some of the ink. He's like, "Here, your turn to draw,"
because it shows how she's evolving as a human being in a way, and how connected the two of them are because of communication, aliens from one another, and yet they're writing together. I think that was my favorite part of the movie.
And she's writing in their language.
Yes, exactly.
Their complex logograms. Logograms. Oh, that's a better way to say it. Logograms. My best scene is going to be when Louise removes her suit inside that chamber to reveal herself to the aliens, because the communication's not landing. They can't really figure out how to get it going. They're scared of each other, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're just as scared of Louise to an extent, even though they know what's about to happen. But her removing her suit, really, she sees the little bird chirping, and this is like the 4th time they've been in the chamber. The bird's fine. There's no radiation here that's damaging.
Yeah, the canary in the coal mine's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So removing the suit's very, kind of a scary sequence for the humans in this chamber, and it's a really exciting moment for the audience to finally take off that suit. They want to see your face. So I think it's a really special moment, because then Renner's character does it as well.
Then Abbott goes, "You're beautiful."
10 out of 10. But it really makes that connection between Abbott Costello and Louise. And what's Renner's character's name? I keep forgetting.
Renner's character?
Yeah.
I got it right here, man.
I don't want to just call him Renner.
Don't worry, man. His name is Renner. I'm kidding. It's Ian Donnelly.
Ian. So Louise and Ian making that connection to Abbott and Costello, it's essential. And I love the scene.
I just made the canary in the coal mine connection because I always thought of that. The canary's there, and that's what canary. But the tunnel looks like a coal mine.
Yeah.
The entire interior looks like a coal mine.
Genius, man.
Whoa, that's wild.
The coal mine so that there's oxygen to breathe.
Yeah. Wow. And the ship looks like a coal mine. Wow, that's
pretty
amazing.
clever. Pretty clever stuff. Still works.
This is also responsible for my favorite meme.
The whiteboard one?
My favorite meme is Amy Adams in the orange suit holding up the whiteboard. And in the film, she writes human. And she has like this look of concern on her face. But someone wrote Sam Jackson's line, "English, motherfucker, do you speak it?" It's my favorite meme. I posted it like a year ago.
It's really good.
It's every time I think of it, I crack up, man. It's a perfect meme.
That's really great stuff.
Top tier meme.
Really great stuff.
S tier meme. It's so funny.
All right. What is your favorite shot from Arrival?
My favorite shot is actually in the same sequence. The first time they're there and the crew approaching the window for the first time in the tunnel. It's just an incredible set. I love the window and the mystery, the fear. I feel the first time I saw the film, I was feeling what the characters are feeling, mainly Ian and Louise. And I was just like, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. It's really beautiful. It's a great shot.
It's a great scene the way they build up to it, because what Denis Villeneuve does so effectively with this film, and it all kind of leads to this moment of the revelation of what the aliens look like, is that takes like 25, 30 minutes to get to that point. And we don't really see much of it. The first 5 minutes of the movie is sort of Louise, her day-to-day, as well as then the flashbacks to the future of her daughter, who we think this is the past, regression of trauma, when it's really not. It's a regression and sort of not wanting to accept the future, you could say, to an extent subconsciously. But we get word of an invasion, aliens arriving on Earth. We don't see the ships really. The best shot we get is the television screen inside of her classroom from a distance, and then sort of on her computer screen see a little bit, but we don't really see the alien or the ships at all until we get to the site. And then finally, 25 minutes into the movie, we see what the aliens look like. So Denis Villeneuve does a great job building the suspense and giving the audience a desire to want to see these creatures. I need to see what they look like. Can we get there? It's just great storytelling, great filmmaking to give the audience something to thirst after something, to quench that thirst finally. It's a great sequence.
So what's your favorite shot, though?
So the whiteboard shot's one of my favorite shots, but besides that, my next favorite shot would be the 360 helicopter shot of the Army base. It's really incredible. It's like 20 seconds, it feels like long. Just, again, a combination of building the actual set piece with the structures, and then CGI helicopters, CGI trucks, CGI soldiers everywhere. It's really terrific.
And those clouds, man.
And then in the distance, we see, once it finally comes around the entire Army base, we see the ship in the distance, not that far away. It's just massive. And honestly, anytime there's a wide exterior of a ship, it's incredible stuff. It really is. Who's the best actor of this film? It's kind of obvious.
It's Abbott.
The Heptapod.
Great. This is my favorite Heptapod.
Giant hand.
No, it's Amy Adams, obviously.
Amy
Like I
Adams.
said earlier, like Denis relies so heavily on so many close-ups of just her face, and she really carries every scene she's in, really maintains an incredible presence and connection for the audience. And she's so talented. She can emote so much with her eyes, and she's one of those actors where when you watch her, you can see that she's actually thinking as the character. You know what I mean? Like, she's thinking as Louise. You can see that on her face.
She transforms. Amy's one of the best out there. And what's so fascinating about the character as well, in addition to everything we've talked about, is an acceptance of a hard journey, a hard path, where she knows she's going to have a child, and she knows once she learns the language and she's experiencing time all at once, she has to accept this journey, and she does, out of love and out of knowing that she's going to feel pain for the rest of her life, knowing that her child will die, knowing that Ian will leave her because she doesn't tell Ian until eventually that after the kid's grown up a little bit that she's going to die of a rare disease, and Ian probably leaves her, you can assume, because why would you do this? Why wouldn't you tell me? If you're experiencing time all at once, you knew this was going to happen. You can assume that's the argument they had that led to their splitting up. So she follows that path, and she's an incredible character. I think one of the most underrated in cinema the last decade, probably.
And I mean, all of the scenes that all of the memories she's seeing, the future memories, they're all the most impactful moments of her future, because that's what memories are. We remember the biggest moments of our lives, the most impactful, the most traumatic, the most emotional. Those are things that people latch onto, and that's why we're seeing those. We're not seeing just like random memories from the future. We're seeing the most important memories from her future, because that's what happens to us. And when we look back on the past, we look on big moments.
What's your best line from the movie, Anthony?
When Louise says, "I forgot how good it felt to be held by you,"
Oh man,
because she hasn't
She's
really
never,
held him
they've
yet.
never embraced.
Yeah, physically, but they haven't gotten there yet. But in her mind, she has.
She already has
And
experienced
then
this.
it's her really understanding, her truly understanding the grasp of the circular time in her mind.
He's like, wait, did I get drunk or something?
When did you hold me like this?
I don't remember that at all. My favorite line is when Louise says, "If you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change things?" And then Ian replies, "Maybe I'd say what I felt more often. I don't know." But I think that's a great line. Because if you ask yourself that, if you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change things? And sort of what this film plays with is the concept of fatalism and determinism. Is there a possibility for Louise's path and humans' path from changing and diverting, or is everything supposed to happen? And the Heptapods obviously know what's going to happen. They know that explosion is going to happen. They know Abbott's going to die, but they as well go into this knowing everything that will happen. Or is there a possibility to divert from the plan? Who knows?
I think that the complexity of the language means that you have to be able to accept that. And so that's why I don't think even the majority of people should ever learn the language, because I think knowing the future, and especially if it's a tragic future, many people won't be able to accept that. It may try to do everything they can to change it. Whereas Louise takes the high road and makes the difficult choice to accept a tragic future.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, it's not like everybody on Earth's going to learn the Heptapod language.
It's not going to be on Duolingo.
It'd be chaos.
Yeah.
Yes, they're not going to have an update Heptapod for your trip to space. All right, let's move into our intermission, everybody, and then we'll come back to Arrival. And before we continue, the best way to support our show is to become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Every single patron has access to weekly bonus episodes. There's an ad-free version of the podcast as well on Patreon for everyone at a minimum tier of $5. And we're also doing holiday cards, greeting cards in the mail for everybody who's $10 minimum and up. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast to sign up today. So many great perks. But again, if you want a holiday card from Anthony and I that will feature hilarious photos of us plus Juno
in a Christmas sweater.
If you want to get it in the mail from us, handwritten from us, then sign up for Patreon. Minimum $10 tier this holiday season. You just do it temporarily for a month or two to get that card.
It's a great card. Again, the ad-free experience of our show is now available on Patreon for the $5 tier and up. So if you want to listen to all of our new episodes, every single one of them, ad-free, they're on Patreon now for $5 and up.
And also, another great way to help the show is to share us with your family and friends. Word of mouth is the best way for a podcast to grow. But also, leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews is essential. We're over 2,000 on Spotify, which is huge, but we're almost at 2,000 on Apple. We need your help to get to 2,000 on Apple because I want that 2K, man. I want that 2K. All right?
I want my phone call. I want it.
I want it now. So help us out. Leave those written reviews. We love to read them on the show. I'll get to one in just a minute.
I just want my phone call. This episode, of course, is sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 at movieposters.com to get 10% off your order right now. They have a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. They make a great gift for the movie lover in your life. Christmas is coming. Get that movie lover their favorite movie poster from movieposters.com. And don't forget to use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order right now.
Right now.
I want it right now.
Right now. Let's get into the intermission. You ready to start with the movie quote competition? Ready. Here we go. The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool.
That's a good quote.
It is a good quote.
Say it again.
The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool.
I have no idea.
Almost Famous.
Oh, nice.
Lester Bangs says it.
Nice. Okay, here's my quote. Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra.
Oh, I know this. Hold on. What is it?
I can add some more lines to it.
No, hold on. Just say it one more time.
Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra.
Tar.
No.
No, it's
It's not about a musician.
not about a musician.
You want some more lines?
It's not. No, hold on. I got this. Say it one more time.
I could say more lines.
Just say it one more time.
say it.
Where's the line?
Where are the drugs going? Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra.
God damn it! I know this, man. I freaking know
I
it.
can throw in a couple more lines.
Just hold on. Give me a second.
3 times.
I know.
You're not gonna get it.
Well, because you keep yelling at me. But you can like.
Do you want more lines?
No, just talk for the people.
What do you want? What are we gonna delay this?
All right, hold on.
Just let me give you more lines. Come on.
No,
man.
I
don't have it.
I got it, man. I do. That's the thing.
What is it?
It's there. Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra. This is holy crap. All right, one more line.
Okay, more lines. You're the best in your row. You sit right up front.
What is this? I don't know, man.
Steve Jobs.
God damn.
He's talking about how, what's his name? He's great, but he's like, what do you even do? You don't write code. You don't build anything. What do you do? And he's like, I play the orchestra.
Yeah. It's a really good movie.
Yeah, great movie.
Good quote. Guess this movie released year, Anthony. Capote.
Oh, Capote was 2004.
5.
Damn.
Did you know Bennett Miller, who made that movie, is making a Christmas Carol movie?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Nice.
It's his next film in production. He hasn't made that many movies,
He is not.
but he's
He has
made
not.
a lot of really good ones.
He only makes really good movies.
Moneyball is excellent. Capote's excellent as well, if anyone's never seen it. Hoffman won an Oscar for it.
Foxcatcher, too. Foxcatcher's great. Wait, what was the question? Oh, you're just... it's just an anecdote.
Yeah.
Never mind. All right, what year did Shame come out?
Shame.
Yeah, I'm like a kid in science class. What?
Shame. Steve McQueen's film. 2000. Inglourious is 2009. Shame After Hunger. I'm going to say 2007.
2011.
2011. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's after Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, after Inglourious.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always thought it was before. Hunger is before. I think Hunger's 2007 then.
Could be 2007.
Could be.
Could be 2008. Who the fuck knows?
Cool, man. All right, movie pop quiz time. What is the name of Amy Adams' character on The Office?
Hot Girl.
That's the first episode she's in.
That's what she's referred to as.
Well, she's got a name in the show.
Emily.
No.
Sarah.
He's never going to get it.
I don't know.
Katie.
I wouldn't have gotten that.
Katie.
Hot Girl's kind of right.
No, what's the name of the episode?
Yeah, but Michael refers to her as Hot Girl.
No, he doesn't call her Hot Girl. He calls her, they all just think she's hot. And then they call
So
her,
I got it right.
So they call her Katie.
So I got it right.
It's really insensitive to call just a woman Hot Girl, Anthony.
So you don't think Amy Adams is hot?
I think she's an incredibly attractive person. But I don't just call her incredibly attractive person. I call her Amy Adams.
I'm referring to Michael Scott, okay?
Canceled.
Canceled.
Too late.
You got me. You got me.
Too late.
Take me in. Take me away, guys. All right. How many Ridley Scott movies has Michael Fassbender starred in? And can you name them?
So we got Prometheus,
Yes.
Alien Covenant.
Yes.
First time they worked together? Hold on.
Hold the phone.
Hold everything.
Hold, please.
Hold, please. Glove, please.
God, please.
Keep, please.
Lamp, please.
Keep, please.
Keep, please. We always the fucking goblin.
Doing that Harry Potter.
Goblin in Green Gods. That's our most used quote, I think. Keep, please.
It's always funny. It's always funny.
And does Mr. Harry Potter have his key?
Oh, yeah, got it here.
Did you see the meme someone put of it's like Harry like lost because Hagrid just abandoned him at the train station. No, it was someone worried meme. It was Dumbledore asking Hagrid, so you brought him to the train, right? You took him to the train, right?
You told him how to get on the train, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I think I did.
I think it was the Padme worried look.
It was a video meme. And it's Theo Vaughn. He's like, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely I totally did that.
Yeah. I did that for sure. It was great. We guys sent to us like by 20 people. It was amazing. So funny.
All right, back to the question: how many films has Michael Fassbender been in for Ridley Scott movies?
Are you going with 2?
I'm going 2. What else is it?
The Counselor.
Oh my God! I forgot he made that.
Yeah.
I just forgot about that movie.
Yeah, it's not one of Scott's best for sure.
And it's
got a great cast though. Javier,
cast is insane.
Brad Pitt. Yeah.
Insane cast.
Great cast.
Written by Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, 3 movies.
Cool. Good question. All right. Who we have for haters this week, Anthony? Any unsubscribes? What do we have cooking?
Raiders.
I'm pretty sure we have a couple unsubscribes on Twitter. I'll pull those up as well.
Oh, are they like real or are they
No, unsubscribes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the fun ones.
Okay, we got we got a bunch. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love how Anthony always like, oh, we got a bunch, and he just starts laughing.
Well, that was a previous one I did last episode. So Blaine's on our V for Vendetta episode wrote, "Don't know what Bonfire Night is? Unsubscribed." So Bonfire Night is what we celebrate, quotes, in England on the 5th of November, and usually the weekend closest to the 5th of November with bonfires and firework displays in public. Also, some people will buy their own fireworks and set them off. Sounds like a normal Tuesday in LA. To celebrate the foiling of the gunpowder plot, as you talked about in the episode. Great episode, lads. Blaine, smiley face. So I didn't know that people did that to celebrate Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, so actually Rob Ellis DM'd us with that. Also the same anecdote explaining Bonfire Night, also known as Guy Fawkes Night. Due to your cultural ignorance, I'm afraid I will have to unsubscribe.
Sorry, bud. And then that's actually our only unsubscribe, just because I've been traveling so much and I wasn't looking at. Oh, you know, I got some.
Sounds like an excuse.
I got actually.
I've been tired.
Ignatius Jackson 235.
Great name.
Yeah,
it's my middle name.
You guys laugh twice as loud as you talk, and my mother is trying to sleep. Unsubscribe.
Starts the Italian.
And then Duncan Martin Baker wrote, "You guys forgot Dread. Unsubscribed." Talking about characters who wear a mask the whole time. And then Batman Who Laughs wrote, "Y'all didn't shave your heads for this review? Unsubscribe." V for Vendetta.
Oh, man.
So we actually got a bunch.
I've been growing out this lettuce for a while.
You should have shaved it. That would have been fun.
No, but for an episode, no. For a better cause, sure. And
I cut my hair once to donate it. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that. Your hair was very long.
I donated, I think, 10 or 11 inches. Yeah.
Something like that.
It was long.
I remember I cut it on camera.
Yeah, you cut it.
I filmed it.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Now I have a great 5-star review.
Made me feel really good about myself.
What did?
Donating it.
I bet it did.
Yeah. No, it was actually sweet. And they actually sent me a card saying the kid that got my hair.
Aww.
It was very cute.
Oh my God.
It was like a 7-year-old.
Did they write it?
No, the kid didn't write it, but the nurse who worked at the hospital wrote it.
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we have a great 5-star review that's very sweet as well.
Nice.
From Roman Lettuce.
Roman!
Speaking
of lettuce.
Well, their name Roman is not Romaine. Like, it's just Roman Lettuce.
That's good. I like that.
Absolutely love this show. Found this podcast on a bit of a whim, and it has slowly become one of my favorite listens while I'm at work. The brothers are absolute comedy, and the episodes flow naturally without any awkward air or talking over one another. You can tell they really respect each other's viewpoints.
Not so much anymore, talking over each other. It used to be pretty bad.
The early episodes was, shut up, man. Plus, as a casual movie watcher, I enjoy learning about some of my favorite movies, as well as listening to some I might not even consider. 5 out of 5 if you haven't already given this movie cast a listen. Hands up emojis. Praising.
Thanks, Roman Lettuce.
Roman Lettuce, huge fan of you with Caesar dressing. Thank you so much for the review. It's really sweet. And Anthony, what is your streaming recommendation for this episode?
My recommendation is The Sting on the Criterion channel. I haven't done a Criterion one for a while. So The Sting is a great film with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. It's a great caper film where they pull off this crazy, elaborate heist of a criminal, a wealthy criminal, and it's just really fantastic. They made it actually only a few years after Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid from the same director, Really phenomenal. It cleaned up at the Oscars with 8 wins.
Wow.
And was
8?
And was the most successful film of that year at the box office.
Did it win Best Picture too?
Best Picture.
Holy crap. That's
And
a
I mean,
lot.
Paul Newman and Robert Redford, they're just so amazing together. Like, they're such superstars, man. When they're on screen, you're like, this is a movie.
A movie. My recommendation is going to be a Denis Villeneuve movie that not a lot of people have actually seen. That in the past I've recommended Incendie, which is a terrific film he made, but I'm going to recommend
I thought
Enemy.
you were saying on Sunday.
No, Incendie. On Sunday. Incendie, French word. But then I'm going to recommend now Enemy, which he made with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a doppelganger movie, very mysterious, also based off a book, and it's on Hulu right now.
Oh, it's one of their only good movies.
I can't,
One of their 5 good movies.
I can't recommend it enough. It's really terrific, but it's flown under the radar for
Yeah.
even Villeneuve fans.
It's because, I think because he makes so many science fiction movies now, those get most of the attention.
Well, yeah, but also Prisoners and Sicario, before that, even those cast a shadow on Enemy.
But the thing is, you got to understand, like, when there's a gun in a movie poster, people are more likely to see it.
True,
There's
but also
action.
he made Prisoners and Enemy the same year they came out in 2013.
True.
I think that's one of the reasons why as well, that Prisoners got way more attention than Enemy when they both got released. Obviously, a couple months apart, but still.
And Melanie Laurent is really great in that film. In Enemy.
It's a really terrific movie. Really, really good.
And Sarah Gadon, she's really good in it too. And
it was edited by
Isabella-
John Smith.
Isabella Rossellini, also great in it.
Sorry, I like to make fun of Anthony's IMDb.
I don't know who edited it off the top of my head.
Set manager was Stephen Price.
Did you say John Smith?
Yeah, John
The
Smith.
most fucking basic name in America.
Well, Stephen Price did the set management.
Uh-huh. Set management?
Yeah. Set manager.
How do you know that?
No, I did it as an impression of you.
Oh, gotcha.
He missed it. Or
It's
whatever.
not a real set manager.
No, not real.
Could be.
All right, let's get back into Arrival. And where do you want to leap off from now?
Well, we were talking about earlier about Louise accepting her future. I think it's one of the most fascinating parts of the film, and it really shows the difficulty of this language and how not many people can do this, because you have to be able to accept the fact of being everywhere all at once. Time is just always with you in every regard, your entire life, and how difficult that is. And Luis is a rare case. I would say the vast majority of people wouldn't be able to handle it, especially in a case like hers where it's a horribly tragic future that she's going to have to live with. And it's very commendable that she still chose to have this relationship with Ian and still chose to carry out the raising of this daughter and having the daughter, knowing that she's going to die. And it's really because there was so much love there that it was worth it. And knowing her daughter and being with her daughter, it was enough. Even for the short amount of time that it was still enough for her to make that decision to continue forward with that. Whereas Ian is an example of someone, and it's not about intelligence, because you said earlier, only like you have to be extremely intelligent. He's incredibly intelligent, but he wouldn't be able to accept that. He wouldn't be able to do this language. He wouldn't be able to have time as a circle, because he probably, if he saw this future, he would have tried to alter it. And so Louise is very unique in that situation where she not only was able to absorb the language and change her brain chemistry and become a circle mentally with time, but she was able to accept her future.
And I guess from a more relatable context, not running away from pain or trauma or trying to escape the past, escape the future. You're accepting it. You're accepting the progression of time, and you're accepting time. And I think that's a really great point why Ian probably wouldn't be able to learn it, even though he's the one that brings up the theory of how your brain changes. And he's probably being affected by it as well. He says, have you been having dreams? But I like how we never see his perspective. I like how we're always with Louise and what she's seeing.
I think he's getting it a little bit. Yeah.
I think, obviously a little
Not
bit
as much as
if
her.
you're learning some of the language, because as they're both progressing, Louise's perspective, she's, having these almost fainting spells of having visions of the future. And again, it's just brilliant filmmaking where we don't reveal that. Denis doesn't reveal that it's the future. He still makes it think it's the past until the third act of the film. And one of the best scenes in the movie to really explain how she's experiencing time once she's fully learned the language is obviously when communication just gets shut off by everybody. The Russians and the Chinese, they shut down first, and then America pulls the plug, go dark on everybody, and then everybody else follows suit around the world. And Louise, she's starting to see the future, and she's starting to see that there's something that can change here, and we can prevent this from happening. We just have to call. So we have to call and communicate with everybody else. We have to share information. That's what the Heptapods want us to do.
We have to work together.
Exactly.
We have to become whole.
And so she gets the satellite phone, obviously, and she doesn't really know in the moment exactly what I'm doing. She's just doing it. She's kind of just like in
dialing
mode.
A number she doesn't know.
She's sort of in autopilot mode. And obviously we know that she speaks Mandarin because she translates President Shang on the security footage from the satellite footage earlier in the film. So she already speaks Mandarin. So that's why she understands it. And then when she's getting the phone, she's not just learning Mandarin on the spot because she already understands it. But then we cut to her talking to President Shang in clearly the future.
At a dinner party.
It's this gala that's being hosted by the President of the United States for all the countries because the aliens have left and we've all come together as a global nation or a global species for the first time ever. And he says, the president said he's very honored to host me here, but I'll be honest with you. The only reason why I came here is to meet you in person. And it's because of you that I stopped the military action that we were about to take, basically.
Because they declared war on the aliens, yeah.
They declared war on the aliens, so didn't Russia. And obviously everyone was going to start firing on them probably. And America was probably going to follow suit as well. And I'll never forget what you said to me. You spoke to me my wife's dying words. And in the moment, cross-cutting the future and present where she's being held at gunpoint through the door with Ian behind her and then in front of her from, what's his name, Elio's dad from Call Me By Your Name.
Steinberg, yeah.
Michael Stolberg.
Michael Stoll, yeah.
He plays I'm guessing, CIA agent.
Agent Halpern.
He's a CIA agent who has her at gunpoint. And she is speaking Mandarin, speaking the last words that President Shang's wife spoke to him at the same time that he's speaking those words, whispering them into her ear, and also reveals his private phone number to her, meaning that, and in the present moment, she's learning and experiencing, and she's using the power of the language from the Heptapods to experience, yeah, exactly, using that tool to experience the memory in the future that she's already had in the future of Shang telling her the dying words, then revealing the phone number to her. So she's accessing that, meaning that once you learn this language, you can kind of just travel to any point and experience of your life.
It's basically like a cheat code around the grandfather paradox.
Exactly, yeah.
Because
that's a good point.
It's all at once. It's all the memories coinciding in every moment. You're always with every memory, the future and the past. So it is, in a way, it's a way around the grandfather paradox.
Which is very common paradox in a lot of science fiction films that deal with any kind of time travel or aliens.
Like, how did she know the number if she didn't dial it yet?
Exactly. Interstellar, the grandfather paradox. Like, how did the beings evolve to that fifth dimension if they came from us and if they were going to die anyways? Grandfather paradox, just an answer.
Yeah, and it does it in a new way that we hadn't seen before. And there's so many great moments of symbology of life in the film. And I think of 2001 a lot when I see this film, and especially the ships. The ships remind me of the monolith from 2001. Obviously, the black the black texture, almost as if it's made out of stone. Although the 2001 monolith is completely smooth and impossible in an impossible shape,
pristine.
In the ships in Arrival, they have this like stone texture to them. However, they're very reminiscent of the 2001 monolith. In a way, just like the monolith helped facilitate the evolution of apes into human beings and the birth of mankind, the ships in Arrival are the catalyst for a new evolution of mankind, a new evolution of humanity, and an evolution of our minds, symbolizing, Louise is the first human being to evolve. Her brain evolves in a way. She's not a linear person anymore. She's a circle. And so she's basically evolved as a human being. So just as the dawning of man was the beginning of the monoliths, was the cause of the monolith's appearance, the evolution of man is the cause of the ship's arrivals in Arrival.
That's a good point.
And also, there's a symbol of death and life in terms of the ship interior. And so there's this common expression, the light at the end of the tunnel, referring to someone who's near death. And follow the light at the end of the tunnel will bring you back to life and prevent you from dying and falling into darkness. And the interior ship is a light at the end of the tunnel in a lot of ways. So I look at that as a correlation of life and death with Louise inside the ship.
Something that Ian says in this film is really important to humanity, where he says we're a planet, or basically a world full of nations, independent nations, basically, with not one world leader. It's either him or the Colonel says it's because they won't communicate. And humanity, that's one of our biggest flaws, is we're so tribal and warring. And obviously, the ideal thing would be here to have like one person to communicate to the entire nations for us all to work together. But it's interesting to finally see it put into film, where it's probably impossible to ever happen, but to have all the nations of the world finally stand together, united, with an alien invasion, to work together. We don't fully see it. It just happens by the time she's learned the language. But I think it's really fascinating. But also before that, just getting the realism of global politics, of sharing information, not sharing information, trusting other nations, not trusting other nations, working together to an extent, keeping others in the dark. Obviously, there's communications in the beginning of the base camps and the beginning of the arrival of the ships all over the world. But eventually, like I said, China goes dark, Russia goes dark. And once that happens, America goes dark. So basically, the three leading countries, global powers of the world, America is the most communicative to everybody else, you could say. But once all three go dark, then everyone follows suit.
I believe that the only way that the nations of the world will unite and humanity will become one group, a collective, is if we ever learn that there are other races of that there are other intelligent beings out there. It's the only way that it will cause a complete unity of Americans in every other nation.
Well, they'd have to come to Earth too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's the only thing that would make us all come together as one people. But unfortunately, because we will always remain divided as nations, unless the idea of global politics becomes interdimensional or interstellar politics.
I think it's really interesting, though. I think they did a great job of what would happen, though, if aliens came to Earth, and how, if we weren't met with a physical threat,
with violence,
or possible death or extinction, but just met with a mystery of a question, sort of a puzzle, how to communicate with these beings. I think they did a really realistic job of how it would go in terms of, like I said, not sharing information, and different countries using different methods to try to communicate, whether it's obviously with America using linguist experts, which I'm sure they all tried, but then eventually China communicating through a game, which obviously we have that great piece of dialogue where Louise basically says, if they're using a game, there's consequences to actions. There's a winner and a loser. If you give them a hammer, then everything to them is going to be a nail, basically. And I think it's a great metaphor. And
the nuance and the risks involved in it.
Yeah, it's a lot more, it's less complex and leads to violence, I'm sure.
And there's one little plot hole. It's not really a plot hole, but I do wish they could have explained it in some way. And I understand why it's not in the film, of why the Heptapods can't just write in English, because they see all time at once, so they obviously know the future of humanity helping them, and they would know the language. They would know the language of humanity's different languages in the future, and they probably wouldn't even be English in the year 3000. But still, they would know what English was, and as well as the other major languages of Earth. And so I'm guessing that's because they can only write in that logogram. It's probably why they don't write in English. I think it could have helped explain that for me, why they only wrote in logogram in their own language, even though they understood English and they have been communicating with humans in their future.
Well, it's actually interesting. That is a thought-provoking loophole, because
that's something that makes me take it down from a 10 to a 9.5.
Because exactly, if Louise can extract a certain point in time to remember what President Shang spoke to her when she whispered it to her,
just for knowledge and future knowledge.
Yeah. Why can't the Heptapods already access to the point where they've learned English?
The explanation would be that they never learned English. Well, no, they learn English in this film. So that's the thing.
I think the explanation is they have to let the humans, let Louise teach them English so that we can understand, so that Louise can understand the heptapod language. So basically, maybe Louise thinks she's teaching them English when really she's teaching herself how to speak the heptapod language.
Yeah, that could be, yeah.
Breaking down English to understand their language. So I'm assuming that maybe both are true, where they do know English already, but they're letting her and Ian eventually learn the language through explaining English.
And also maybe it helps them get humanity to work together to solve the problem.
Yeah. But I think that's what makes it seems like it's a reverse engineering of a course. Like you already speak a language, but you need someone else to know your language.
Yeah. So that's something that I wish I could have gotten a little bit of exposition about that, because when I watched this movie, I'm like, shouldn't they already know the language?
I never really thought about it until now, but I think that makes sense to me now.
I'm a very inquisitive person.
Well, I hope that's a solid theory that you accept.
I accept it. I mean, I think the movie's great, but there's that which makes me knock it down from a 10 to a 9.5.
Because Louise, at that point, she's not at the point where she can just access any point in time. So
she's not fluent yet.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what it is. They're probably like, oh, she's taking forever.
Because, I mean, there's that. They probably know English as well as Chinese and the other major languages, but they're just getting the humans to get on their level and on their page with their language, so they're kind of just playing along. That's my guess. That's probably correct.
I think that's right. And that's like they knew Abbott was going to die. They knew the explosion was going to happen. They waited for it to happen. Obviously, I think it's a great little catalyst or a disruption of a progression in plot for the characters. Like, we're making progress, and then let's have some internal radicalized soldiers try to take matters into their own hands, which ruins the potential of communicating even more until Louise just goes by herself into the field and they drop that mini ship to her.
Yeah. I think that, and also, it's funny, this movie was so reminiscent of Man of Steel, because she did the same thing in Man of Steel, went in a little ship.
That's a good point.
With like a breather and stuff.
Around cornfields.
Yeah. They had like, they kind of like a kinship and like a cousin nature, both of those films.
Actually,
in a little bit.
I never thought about that.
And the texture of the ship in Man of Steel is like not that far off from the Arrival stuff.
Even the wide shots of the 360 wide shot of, oh my God, 360 wide shot of Superman facing off in front of the Kryptonians with the army behind him.
It's not that far off from Arrival. Yeah.
Wow.
I always think of Man of Steel when I watch this movie.
Now I do.
And just Amy Adams being just like a normal person being put into a black spaceship.
Yeah, and aesthetically they do look similar. They do. Wow. That's cool.
That's pretty badass.
I love this movie, man. I really do. And when
they also predicted lockdowns it's a few years before ours.
Quite a few. This movie, when it comes to science fiction, I love slow burns. And I love when a slow burn's done well with science fiction, whether it's aliens or whatever. Like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a really good example of that. We watched that recently on Twitch. That's a slow burn science fiction where once things start going, it takes like the second and third act to really get involved and understand what's happening and the scope of it.
There's no exposition spoon feeding in that film in this one.
And I think that it's just a really great storytelling, really great filmmaking, and similar to how we were talking about recently how everyone forgot about Inception because Christopher Nolan's filmography is so stacked. This might be a movie in like 5-10 years because Denis' filmography is so stacked that it might get shadowed by Dune, by Blade Runner, by Dune Part 2, and some other movies if he makes in the future. But it's really, really sensational. I think it's probably a top 3 movie in his filmography, maybe, honestly.
It's debatable.
It's tough.
It's just like Nolan. It's hard to rank his movies.
Because with Denis, like I feel like Prisoners is a top 3 movie for him. So isn't Dune. And then it's like Blade Runner 2049, Arrival.
I put Blade Runner 2049 over Dune. But it's pretty close. But I put Prisoners over Dune. Just because
Prisoners might be his best movie.
Prisoners on Sunday is great as well.
On Sunday
that twist.
Terrific.
I mean, that twist, man.
It's got the most shocking twist I've seen since Fight Club.
It's insane.
Yeah,
it's hard to rank his movies.
Yeah, it is a tough ranking, but I mean, I can't stop thinking about whenever I'm making a list for Denis, like Prisoners always comes to mind at number 1.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the scale and scope and filmmaking of Blade Runner and Dune are so impressive, and obviously the roots of that were built here with Arrival, with so much CGI involved, as well as it was his first PG-13 movie, so making a film for a broader audience rather than just adults with R.
What's interesting about Denis and his interpretation of science fiction with spaceships specifically, we're used to spaceships being used in like maybe more metropolitan areas, but he often likes to set his spaceships in nature. We see it a lot in Dune, especially when the Atreides are preparing to leave, and we see that great shot of the spaceship emerging from within the lake, and also behind the cliffs behind Paul as he's walking on the shore, as well as, obviously, I mean, Arrakis is just all desert, so it's just basically all nature. But he likes to juxtapose high-tech spacecrafts with nature oftentimes. And Spielberg was really the first person to do that with Close Encounters in the middle of the desert with the spaceship landing there. However, I think Denis Villeneuve has taken a page out of his book, and I think it's really interesting to see the contrast of these incredibly, impossibly high-tech spacecrafts just chilling, juxtaposed amongst beautiful nature.
Arrival has really great wide shots. One of my favorites is we get a great sort of helicopter wide of one of the bean ships. I think it's the one that they eventually go to.
The bean ship.
Yeah, that they eventually have their army base at. And it's really incredible to see behind the scenes. I was talking earlier how they filmed the locations. They filmed the landscapes, then add CGI. So obviously the ship's CGI. But this one in particular is shot, it's on a farmland. And there's obviously like houses and square crop fields. But what they did was they erased all the houses, all the roads and everything there to eliminate them, as well as they darkened up the grass, got rid of the squares of the different crops, the different fields of grass, added trees, changed the color tone to a much more Everest green, a more vibrant, darker green. But it's really filmed, but then just enhancing it so much to make the image look more natural. But then the entire landscape looks completely undisturbed. So there's this high-tech intergalactic spaceship on undisturbed land on Earth. It's really fascinating.
So that's with the green field, the main one.
Yeah, the wide one.
That's where it was.
Yeah. So even the shots of the grass when we're on the ground, like there's a shot of when Louise is like freaking out after the ship has just taken off, and there's trucks coming up to her on the dirt road. The trucks are real, and she's real, obviously, and the camera's shot on location. But then they add tall grass. The grass around her is all added CGI.
Oh wow! I didn't even
to make
notice.
it look more like undisturbed, because they wanted to make it look like this ship parked on undisturbed land. But it's a field like in farmland. It's probably a cheap place to shoot.
It probably worked for location as well as, I mean, I'm sure it was the perfect horizon line and landscape that Denis wanted.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, there's a couple houses and farms here, whatever, we'll just erase them.
Exactly. But then when you have a close-up shot like Louise running around the field, they just add CGI grass. It's really fast. So the grass is darkened and more vibrantly green versus like more of a very light green, like a lot of the grass around the farmland.
Yeah, that suits what I was just saying. I think he just really wanted to have that strong contrast of nature and futuristic technology
exactly
in one spot.
And not just nature, undisturbed nature.
Yeah. I think it works really well because it's a stunning location. I was always wondering, like, where the hell did they shoot this?
Beautiful.
Because I guess it's not the middle of nowhere. It's just like a
little bit. It's kind of comparatively to like a coastal city. Sure.
Yeah, but it's like civilized in some way.
Yeah.
There people live there.
Yeah, I'll send you a photo later. It's
I'm
cool.
Curious. I want to see that. Hopefully you can put it up on the screen for the viewers.
Yeah, we'll put it on the screen for the video version.
Screen.
Oh yeah, I'm editing this episode.
Yeah, you got this, man. This is a James edit.
What else you got for Inception, man?
Inception. Well, I really like Inception.
Arrival. I'm sorry.
Hold on one sec. This fucking guy. We said all of my fun facts.
Is that Morse code?
Yes.
Yeah, what else?
Yes.
I think I'm good.
I'm good, yeah.
I think we covered everything that I wanted to discuss. And I really enjoy this movie. I think it's gorgeous. Again, demand second and third watches. If you've only seen it once, watch it ASAP. Because you'll get so much more out of it.
It's a movie where, like, after you watch it, you're like, I need to watch it again.
But dude, within 6 minutes I was crying when I watched it the other night.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it in like a year or two, but like when you know that what you're seeing in the first act is visions of the future, memories of the future of her daughter dying and not the past, so much more emotional.
I like how this movie takes place over several months.
Yeah.
It's not like when I walked into this movie, I was like, oh, they're going to solve this problem like in a couple of days. But I like how long it takes for the story to unfold.
She has a great house too.
She's got a wonderful house.
She must make good money off those books, man.
Yeah.
She's right on like a lake.
Beautiful home.
Really nice place. But
Does well for herself.
that wraps our episode of Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, besides sharing us with your family and friends, is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. You'll have access to weekly bonus episodes for every single patron. You can also get the ad-free experience of every single episode for the minimum $5 tier. We're doing that holiday card. If you want to get a holiday card in the mail, in person from us this holiday season, $10 minimum tier. Sign up right now.
James will sing at your doorstep.
Yes, we'll come caroling with hot chocolate outside your door. No, that'll be $1,000 tier. But and again, leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple. Thank you so much for tuning in.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons: Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian Singleton, Tyler McFly, Andrew Hagan. Our chosen one patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Raiders of the Lost podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.